Welcome back to Healthcare Consumerism Radio. This is Brent Macy, Managing Director for the Institute for Healthcare Consumerism, joined with my co-host Doug Field, CEO and founder of the Institute. And we talked about exchanges in the opening segment there, Doug, and a lot of moving pieces are really happening around that. We've actually got Jeff Yaniga, who is the Vice President of Exchanges with Connecture, joining us. Jeff, welcome to the program.
Hi, Brent. Good morning, Doug.
Hey, good morning, Jeff.
Now, Jeff, you guys are in the wild world of the private exchange market, but you also look at other pieces from an exchange standpoint. Kind of give our audience a little bit of an overview on Connecture and you all's position in the market.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. And looking forward to Atlanta in May for sure.
Great. Now, you guys, so kind of give our audience the overview on Connecture and kind of all the moving pieces around the exchanges for you guys.
Sure. The long and short is that we're a web-based shopping and enrollment company for exchanges. And I think the number, at least for us, that's really humbling is 33 million. And 33 million is the number of consumers that have shopped and successfully enrolled through our four pillars. And the four pillars of our exchange business, first and foremost, is our DRX division, and formerly known as Destination RX. And that division powers a very large exchange, Medicare.gov, and 1-800-MEDICARE. Along with that, we power about 45 health plans, shopping and enrollment in Medicare, as well as some very large benefit consultants and e-brokers. The other aspect of DRX that you guys were discussing, at least in brief, in the intro, was transparency tools, and our drug compare transparency tool powers many of the large pharmacy benefit managers, and it's certainly an element of our shopping services. So that's pillar one in Medicare. And what DRX is in Medicare, our Insure Advantage product is an under 65, so shopping and enrollment exchange products for small group, large group, as well as individuals. The third pillar is our state exchange division, and today we power 3 of the state exchanges. And then the fourth division is the team that I work for, and we're fortunate enough to be able to pull together all of that technology and innovation into a private exchange offering for brokers, health plans, benefit consultants, and then large aggregators, which you were talking a little bit about as well.
Do you go direct to employers, a large employer, with your private exchange model?
We don't.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, our customers have been pretty insistent that we don't, and that's an important tenet of our business. We service health plans, benefit consultants, and certainly large aggregators only.
Yeah, Jeff, you have a very unique view of the market, and I know you've done some user surveys. Can you talk to our audience about some of the findings that you've had?
Yeah, sure. I think our marketing friends and health plan friends will love some of these stats, and we take design very serious. We've learned a lot from our customers. So this year especially, as we add to the functionality and the releases in our private exchange shopping, there are 3 findings that were significantly compelling. One was around the right amount of choice. 2 was around the tolerance people have for lack of a better term, lifestyle questions. And 3 is the buying criteria that people hold up as important when making decisions. So starting off with choice, there's certainly a paradox here. People want choice, but they don't want too much. So the options they were given were less than 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, or more than 20 choices is the right amount for a conclusive decision. And the survey was very telling. Less than 5 was plenty for 40% of the survey. 5 to 10 choices was enough for 44% of the survey. So nearly 85% of respondents thought that 10 or less was plenty of choice. And certainly there's the element of the population that wants more, but it was a very small element.
Do you think, Jeff, from your view, do you think that will change as the consumers become more educated about the type of choices that they can make for they and their families?
Yeah, I really do, Doug.
Yeah.
There's no doubt, and I think we've learned this from nearly a decade of online shopping in Medicare. With the tools that are available, the population increases their healthcare acumen year after year after year. And as they understand the consequences or benefits of a good decision, they see choice in a different light. And that's certainly something we've learned and have adapted our technology for.
Jeff, from the survey, was there any other findings on kind of what the consumer was looking for in the platform from a choice standpoint?
Yeah, Brent, one of the questions that I found really interesting asked, how many questions are you willing to tolerate before you see pricing and plans? And we gave three options. The first option essentially said, I'll answer as many questions as it takes, or a lot of questions at least, to get me to the right plan. The second option was, just tell me the price. I'm a numbers person. And then the third was somewhere in between. And this is one that we've surveyed for years and years. And this year, it was telling because it was inconclusive. We had nearly equal responses between those three preferences. And that taught us a lot. That taught us that our technology for shopping really needs to be smart and personalized and give the person the ability to dive deep, but without taking them through a very intrusive process. So if you don't do it right, you may offend 66% of the people. So we found that very interesting.
When you working with your brokers and consultants and advisors, and working with their employer clients, what are the key things that the employers need to be looking at when they're deciding, if an exchange model and what exchange model might fit their organizations?
So I think it's interesting. There are a few things that have stayed the same. From the very highest level, you read the 2013 Aon Hewitt study,
right.
and employers are telling them, please continue to offer PPOs,
right.
high deductible, consumer-driven plans with HSA for sure, and HMOs as well. But in the simplest form, the employers are asking for choice that will attract and retain healthy employees. So I'll certainly show some bias here. Don't trust me, but trust the researchers on this one. You guys are obviously well-versed on some of this marketplace, but Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs and Oliver Wyman and Boston Consulting Group seem to have come to a consensus that employers are going to move people to this space, and the consensus is anywhere from 30 million to 45 million people moving to a private exchange environment in the next 3 to 5 years. So it's really interesting. It's a really interesting time.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be your typical maturation. It's going to be a pretty quick run-up, don't you think so? Don't you agree? It's going to be a pretty quick adoption.
Yeah, I do agree. The trajectory, obviously, to be determined, but I think the end product is pretty predictable at this point.
Yeah. Jeff, when you look at the resources that are available to consumers, in these exchanges, what are the things that you think are absolutely key to have sitting in these exchanges to make this all function correctly?
So our users told us there's three questions they want to make sure they can answer and make sure that the technology serves these questions. And the first, I'll put a little bit of a twist on, but it's how much is my doctor worth to me? I think with all the news about if you like your doctor, keep it, it certainly shines some light onto that question. And we're all going through some validation about how much someone is willing to pay to keep their doctor. So that's one, and tools around that are paramount. Two is people want to know that if they have predictable expenses in the next year, and these can be any kind of expenses that are supported by insurance, give me technology that helps me choose properly given that potential outcome. And then third, transparency tools around pharmacy and drugs. Our users are telling us that that's an enormous part of their out-of-pocket expense, and they want to understand their options better.
Now, if you were to look into your crystal ball, and I know the private exchange market's moving extremely fast. It seems as we see new companies jumping in almost weekly with an exchange platform or or trying to enable an exchange. If you look kind of into your crystal ball, where do you see this market in 1, 2, 5 years from now?
Yeah, so for us, there's three tailwinds that we're tracking very, very closely. And this is a comment that, again, was made earlier in the intro. Our studies indicate that as healthcare acumen improves, people are going to become better and more sophisticated shoppers, and they're going to demand that technology supports that sophistication. That's number one. Number two, I'll say that if I'm in the voluntary or supplemental space and I'm a provider of those products, there's an enormous tailwind at their back. Mm-hmm. One reason, which I think is certainly non-trivial, is as employers start to offer stipends and choice, if one spouse is covered by medical products, another working spouse may have the complete ability to buy supplemental products that support their need more so than they ever have in the past. And every private exchange, and with Connecture included, is making sure that those supplemental and voluntary products are available and available in a very easy way. And third, which the news has already bore this out in the last day, but new players are entering the market, and this is a tailwind we're tracking closely. Yep. Banks, financial institutions, and retailers who have very strong relationships with their consumers today are looking to serve that constituency in a different way, and private exchanges are going to enable that, in my opinion.
Yep. Well, Jeff, we really appreciate you joining us on the program today. Kind of as we wrap up, let our audience know how they can get in touch with you guys.
Yeah, sure, especially if anybody's interested in learning more about the survey we did or about the work we do. Info@connecture.com, info@connecture.com, and just mention Jeff Radio in the subject line, and we'll help you out.
All right, Jeff. Hey, really appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Look forward to seeing you here in Atlanta next month, or actually May, so it's not April quite yet. But have a great weekend, and to the rest of our audience, stay tuned for the next segment of Healthcare Consumerism Radio.
Hey, this is Doug Field, CEO of the Institute of Healthcare Consumers, along with my co-host Brent Macy, Managing Director, and welcome back to Healthcare Consumerism Radio. And kind of continuing the discussion on private exchanges, and joining us today is Craig Hasday, Chief Operating Officer with Frenkel Benefits, which is one of the largest privately held brokerage and consulting firms in the United States. Craig, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, good to have you on the program.
It's nice to be here.
Yeah. Hey, give our audience a little background on Frenkel, and then we'll move into kind of this discussion about what you guys are doing in exchanges and what you see.
Sure. Frenkel is a large regional broker, predominantly in the New York marketplace, but we service clients throughout the country. Our employee benefit practice has about 70 people in it, and we introduced our version of a private exchange, the Frenkel Benefits Marketplace, back last November. We use the BeSwift platform as our platform. We are sort of agnostic as to platform. We work with a number of other different platforms because we believe that first and foremost we're advisors to our clients. So we've been playing around that private exchange space for quite some time now.
Yeah. Craig, what's your typical client size?
We have a lot of clients in the smaller end of the market, but the clients that really are most interested in the private exchange space, probably 300 to 500 employees in that range.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, Craig, this is Brent. When you look at the private exchanges, and there are a lot of different models out there, how would you really, define an exchange, and how is it different from an enrollment platform that's been out there for a long time?
It's funny, the line that I've heard at every single conference I've attended on private exchanges is, if you've seen one private exchange, you've seen one private exchange. They're all fairly different.
Yeah.
I would define a private exchange as a marketplace. The kind of the Aon private exchange, I think, was the first one out there, and people like Liaison quickly grasped the concept and said, "Hey, we're a private exchange too. Let's grab that name." I think a private exchange is just a vehicle to introduce consumerism, to introduce choice, and to bring employees more into the purchase equation in healthcare. I mean, for quite some time, as we see the evolution of wellness, and we look at employers that have had multiple products, and even employers that have had buy-up strategies, which is in effect a defined contribution model. I think this is not such a revolutionary thing. I think it's just an evolution of the marketplace, and it's a label that I think a lot of marketers are trying to put in place in order to take advantage of the buzz around healthcare reform.
Right. There is a reality, wouldn't you agree, that a well-run private exchange it makes it easier to facilitate defined contribution, correct?
Oh, there's no question about it. Yeah. I mean, the ultimate, I think to kind of strip away a lot of the hype around private exchanges, it really is a mechanism to introduce defined contribution, to introduce consumerism. And I hate to say it because it's kind of a dirty little secret, but I think it's a mechanism that many employers are using to leverage their employees into lowest common denominator plans. And I think that's one of the unfortunate offshoots of those that are adopting private exchanges. The ones that I see, most quickly embracing the whole concept of private exchanges are the employers that are coming to grips with either present uncontrollable costs or expected uncontrollable costs, and it's saying, I really do need to get my employees more engaged in the cost continuum, and using the private exchanges and defined contribution to say, it's going to make sense for you to take more risk. I often use the analogy that if an automobile insurance policy covered gas and oil, how expensive would automobile insurance be, and would people have any incentive when there's a gas crisis to cut back on utilization? That's unfortunately what's happened with the healthcare system. I remember back when I first got my first child was born in 1983, and I paid a $400 deductible, and I had a 20% coinsurance. I think it cost me $600 to have my daughter. And I remember thinking that was a lot of money.
Yeah. Now, Craig, when you look at all the different models out there, there's we talked about it in the first news and views segment. The multi-carrier, single carrier. How do you have a preference on multi-carrier, single carrier, and then how do you guys look at the technology? You'd mentioned you utilize B-Swift from a platform standpoint, but you have some others. How do you come to the determination on the technology partner?
So the technology partner has to be robust. I think the most critical aspect of technology is flexibility and the ability to provide decision support software. I think that's really what it comes down to. Those are the essence of what you need. As far as multi-carrier versus single carrier, I think it's all about risk. I mean, ideally, as a consumer, I'd want every single carrier out there on the exchange. I'd want to be on the public exchanges. But we see what's happening with prices on the public exchange marketplace. The double-digit growth that we're hearing about for 2015 is a reality, and the selection issues that we're hearing about on the public marketplace is a reality. And in the private exchange world, the employers are going to be able to control the selection risk, and you can more effectively control selection risk with a single carrier than you can with a multi-carrier. So I truly, in the middle market, don't believe that multi-carrier is sustainable. Maybe when you have 25,000 employees or 30,000 employees, multi-carrier is sustainable because effectively you're self-insured anyway, so you're not so much concerned about selection. Right. But those middle market employers that are looking to control risk are going to want to use the levers that they can only have with a single carrier.
Yeah, we see the same thing, Craig, and we tend to agree. Talk about the depth of, everyone talks about presenting the complete benefit experience. Exchanges will enable you to present to your employee population the complete benefit experience, well-rounded supplemental health, voluntary, transparency, decision support tools, and then they help manage the piece. How are you advising your clients, and what are you helping them doing, taking this first step, second step?
Well, from a first step perspective, we're trying to keep it simple. We're not trying to expand the universe so quickly. But if the idea is to empower employees to make the choices that make the most sense for them, the more products, the better. And the major pushback to multiple products from the employer perspective has been, it's too hard to explain, it's too hard to administer, it's too hard to reconcile the bills. With a private exchange platform, all of those objectives are gone. Yep. And, it's really quite easy to put a multi-matrix product portfolio out there. I think that most of the employers that are looking at private exchanges are electing to not just throw out the whole universe of products, but rather are looking to go a little slow on selection because it is too hard to explain. It's too hard for employees to absorb. They really want the employers to understand the health insurance purchasing decision before they are, looking at these vast array of products. But it's coming. There's no question that
eventually they'll be there.
Employers are going to get out of this game of explaining it and leave it to the platforms.
Right.
Now, Craig, if this was 2-3 years ago when the exchanges were really starting to come into vogue, the brokers, consultants out there were kind of concerned. Did they have a role to play? And I think now it does appear that brokers, advisors, consultants have a big role to play with these private exchanges. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, the ultimate role that the broker is going to play is in cost containment. The employers, private exchanges sound great, but the reality is employers are still going to have to control costs, and they're going to still need advisors to control costs. I think about the tax software that came out there, and they thought it was going to be the end of tax providers, tax advisors. That didn't happen, and it's not going to happen with healthcare advisors.
Well, Craig, and I think running parallel with that, and very important in your role in serving your clients, particularly when I look at that mid-sized market that you're talking about, is compliance. I mean, you put them in exchange, but you got to help them with compliance too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you, I'm sure you did see the release yesterday of the new IRS compliance forms for healthcare, and I looked at them and my head spun. In my blog, franklyspeaking.com, I wrote a piece for Monday about the tax forms that are going to be required. They're just so incredibly complex, and every individual, every small person who's buying insurance on the exchange is going to have to deal with these forms. Compliance is the biggest nightmare out of this whole legislation.
Now, Craig, do you think private exchanges are the magic pill to control healthcare costs?
I don't. I think private exchanges are part of the evolution. I think ultimately where we're going to get in this country is high deductible plans. Mm-hmm. Moving everyone to the HSA space. I see HSA, HRA, FSA, all of those vehicles converging into one master product, and insurance being what really it should be, which is protecting the risk that a family can't afford to absorb themselves, and the small dollar expenses. I think are going to go toward these master savings accounts in one form or another. I really truly don't see private exchanges as a long-term sustainable solution. However, I do think that the vehicle that is developed to administer and to explain and to bring the consumer information is going to be sustainable. Mm-hmm. So the private exchange vehicle will be sustainable. The private exchange vehicle is a cost containment solution. I think that's going to run out of gas pretty quickly.
So it's still, in your opinion, it still is going to be a consumerism type market where that employer still needs to work with their broker consultant on how to empower that employee population to become that better consumer in health and healthcare?
Absolutely, and I think wellness, which has really taken on steam, is going to continue to take on steam because wellness extends beyond health insurance. It extends to productivity, it extends to absenteeism, presenteeism, it extends to satisfaction of employees in the workplace. I think that the employers are going to take a central and critical role. I don't see, particularly as we look at what happened with the VA, I don't see a single national player as even viable in the next decade or two. I just can't believe that this experience is going to rub well with American voters.
Now, when you look at going back to the exchanges, are there pricing issues that arise with the exchanges? You had mentioned, employee consumers going in and choosing down on their benefits, and I've heard that from panels before at shows and looking at that HSA. What happens with the pricing? Are there pricing issues that arise because of that?
Well, that's where this thing runs out of gas. Right. Ultimately, you're going to have selection concerns. Mm-hmm. People who are sicker are going to buy more benefits. People who are less sick are going to buy less benefits, and the more benefits are going to be priced accordingly. Mm-hmm. So when you have selection pricing on anything, it runs out of gas quickly because the individuals that are they're going to be forced out of the system. We're going to see a leveraging down of benefits. Gradually there'll be a large spectrum of products available, but as it becomes apparent that the people that are buying it are using it more so than the lower purchasers, that selection price is what's going to eliminate the options available for many employers.
Well, Craig, we really appreciate having you on the program today. Very insightful. Would love to have you back sometime again on the program. So have a great weekend up there, and would love to have you join us at IHC Forum West if you think you can make it in Las Vegas, December 10th to 12th. So really appreciate it.
Would love to do it. Thanks, guys, for the invitation.
All right, take care. Everybody else, stay tuned for the next segment of Healthcare Consumerism Radio.